Welcome to another edition of What Saith the Scriptures, and I'm Harley Howard. Privilege and a blessing to be with you this afternoon, or wherever and whenever you are watching or listening to this Bible teaching or verse by verse study through the book of Isaiah. Today we're going to begin chapter 36. We wrapped up 35 last time, and message number 248. This is the review of the coming invasion of Judah, part 1. And it's actually chapters 36, 7, 8, and 9 are actually, this is very important how the Bible integrates together. It is a, what word could I use? 36, 7, 8, and 9 all detail the, how can I put, I tell you, sometimes an old mind is a terrible thing to have. But it chronicles, Second Chronicles, chapters 18, I think 18, 19, maybe 20. And also, Second Kings, chapters 18, 19, 20. And also Second Chronicles, chapter 32. So you're actually going to get something which is highly unusual, even in my thinking, in terms of Bible study. We're actually going to integrate 3 books together: Isaiah, Second Kings, and Second Chronicles, and we're going to see how they all interwove together. It's amazing. You're going to get exposition literally from 3 books of the Bible. How about that? How about something like that? That's fantastic. I love it. I enjoy it. Now, if you excuse me, I will have me mine coffee. Now, I took a lot of ribbing yesterday from you believers that mocked me because I used the Pyrex cup for coffee. I like it. In fact, if you had been here earlier, it would have been filled with tea. Excuse me. I posted my cup and I said, a lot of you have been giving me grief, in summary, over my choice of cutlery to drink coffee. And I said, if you were so moved negatively about me using the Pyrex cup, message me and send me the cup of your choice. I'll be more than happy to receive any and all coffee cups that you are so moved to rescue me from using Pyrex ware. And I'll be more than happy to give you ongoing, unhindered, shameless plugs with you and your coffee and your coffee cup. So if you feel so moved, so led to help me in my backsliding of using a Pyrex cup as a coffee cup, and you feel so led to send me a coffee cup of your choosing, your cups, message me and I'll see my address. How about that? You guys were merciless. I'm telling you, people were saying that's coffee. Where's the coffee? I mean, it was like I, I didn't expect the professional coffee brigade to come on my pages and nuke the daylights out of me, but it was all in good fun. But I'm serious about that cup business. If you feel like you want to send me a cup, knock yourself out. All right. Now, chapter 36 of Isaiah, I was a bit tempted to summarize the chapter because not only 36, but the next 3 chapters as well, because, we've studied some of what we're going to be looking at over the next 4 different chapters in previous studies, but I thought long and hard since I've been spending so much time in the study of Isaiah, working up unto this point of the pre-invasion of Jerusalem by Assyria, Sennacherib. I decided that the flow of the book itself would not be interpreted properly if I decided to do any kind of a summary. Let me just teach the text and be very happy about it. So we're going to do a deep dive in the next 4 chapters. Again, it's going to be a simulation of Isaiah chapters 36 through 39, 2 Kings, and 2 Chronicles, and maybe some others as well. So let's get right into verse 1. Now it came to pass in the 14th year of King Hezekiah that Sennacherib, king of Assyria, came up against all the defended cities of Judah and took them. You're going to see some things that I didn't even see. Little things which make a big difference in this assimilation of these various books of the Bible. Very interesting. We know already and discussed previously that King Hezekiah was the greatest king of Judah that they ever had, no question. He's described as one who trusted the Lord, so much so that there were no kings like him in all the kings of Judah before or after him. So he was the best king they had. He brought tremendous reforms to the land, etc. And he was excellent in terms of, by comparison. No one equaled his excellence, so to speak. He loved the Lord. He clave to the Lord. These are things that are descriptive of King Hezekiah in the other accounts. He clave to the Lord, meaning that he stuck to the Lord like two objects were glued together. God was his life. God was his affection. God was his everything. Now we know that because, again, when he became king, he made the greatest reforms in Judah, unfortunately, or until his son that came after him was the worst king in Judah. But anyway, we'll probably maybe touch bases on that. That's a possibility as we go verse by verse to the book of Isaiah. Now, he wasn't perfect. Obviously, he wasn't a perfect man, and neither was any of the other kings. Whether you're talking David, Solomon, none of them were perfect. But when it came to just wholesale integrity, Hezekiah was the greatest of all the kings of Judah. His foolish act, of course, before the Babylonians would hurt the nation. Now, here's a man that was just rescued from one of the enemies of Israel, and he's courting the other enemies of Israel. I can't explain why, and I won't now anyway, but he began to give Babylonian leaders a tour of the temple and everything, that the amounts of gold and silver, what have you, which was, oh my goodness. But his overall entire life was a demonstration that he followed the Lord. His cleaving, of course, to the Lord was demonstrated in his immediate obedience to the commandments of the Lord. So again, when a person says, I'm a believer, I'm a worshiper of God, I really love the Lord, don't give any credibility to any of our words. Look at the life. The life's going to tell it all, because there are people that they went to so-called church today and they threw their hands up and did the twitch, rattle, and roll, or whatever. And, they sang and threw up praise to the Lord, but their lives aren't living for God. And this is something that's pandemic in the church, the professed church, that we have a lot of people that are giving a lot of praise and worship to a God they don't serve. They don't serve him at all. It's interesting that when Jesus was tempted by the devil, and the devil offered him, frankly, everything that Jesus already owned, and he says, all you got to do is fall down and worship me. Now, notice what Jesus said. Jesus told the devil, thou shalt worship the Lord thy God, and him only shall thou serve. So worship and service comes together. It's part of the same coin. So when a person says, I love the Lord and I worship the Lord, well, let's take a look at how you do that. Let's see, there's a cleaving to the Lord, demonstrated by our immediate obedience to the commandments of the Lord. Now, Sennacherib, king of Assyria, his intention was to come up against Judah and Jerusalem. Okay. Now, Assyria already destroyed the northern kingdom. Okay. Took everyone into captivity, with the exception of those that had escaped at his hand. And he surrounded the cities and entered into Judah. And so his first intention was to break Judah up, okay, to divide the cities and then eventually to win them to himself, to overcome them. Now, there's a lot of moving pieces going on here. And without the understanding of 2 Kings and 2 Chronicles, we would have little to no understanding of what Isaiah is writing about. I like the fact that there is this assimilation in the books of the Bible that you really can't understand one without the other. And I keep saying it. Maybe one day somebody, instead of getting tired of hearing me say it, they'll go, you know what, it is true. And then you start saying it. You can't understand the books of the Bible if you don't study the books of the Bible. I don't even know why anyone has to say that. You can't understand the New Testament unless you understand the Old Testament. Sometimes, again, logic and sense and reason, it just escapes people. 39 books of the Bible, and then if you include the Gospels, okay, so you're looking at 43 books of the Bible. The first 43 books of the Bible, creation, the nations, Israel, etc., Egypt, all, their captivity, their escaping, 43 books of the Bible. There is no mention of any church. It's all about Israel, primarily, and their current but yet future restoration in prophecy. And yet we ignore all that and then jump to a New Testament like we understand it. And then we don't even do any exposition on that. We're just basically cliff noting the Bible half to death. And I wouldn't even say that. How about clip noting the Bible half to death? It's ridiculous. Some people think they know that. They don't know you don't know your Bible if you're not studying your Bible. Okay? So the first thing Hezekiah did when he saw Sennacherib coming up, and we'll see that later, or we'll see it later in this study, is that he offered tribute money to hopefully prevent him from what he had planned to do. Because sometimes the kings just wanted tribute money and you could still survive and live in the land as long as you be their vassal, their mouthpiece, tell the people what to do through them, you're fine. 2 Kings 18, verse 13. Now in the 14th year, King Hezekiah did Sennacherib, king of Assyria, come up against all the fenced cities of Judah and took them. And Hezekiah, king of Judah, sent to the king of Assyria to Lachish, saying, I have offended, or have I offended you? Return from me that which thou puttest on me, and I will bear. And the king of Assyria appointed unto Hezekiah, king of Judah, 300 talents of silver and 30 talents of gold. And Hezekiah gave him all the silver that was found in the house of the Lord and in the treasures of the king's house. At that time did Hezekiah cut off the gold from the doors of the temple of the Lord and from the pillars which Hezekiah, king of Judah, had overlaid, and gave it unto the king. So he gave Sennacherib everything he wanted, everything he requested. Okay. Now, the reason why Hezekiah was apologizing to the king of Assyria was because of his attempted alliances with other nations to resist Assyria. We saw that already. They tried to get Egypt and their vassal nations to come in their defense, and God said, you can try it, but it ain't going to work because I'm not going to let it happen because Egypt can't help themselves. They got enough turmoil internal turmoil right now. They can't help themselves. Since you have nothing really to offer them, the answer is going to be no. And this is what he told them that they were going to do, and this is what they would experience. And they did exactly what God told them. So the Assyrians, well, they figure, okay, you want to try to get other nations to come against us? Okay, I tell you what, you give me X number of, bars or tons of silver and X number of gold, and we'll just, we'll just say, okay, we'll call it a day. So he gave the tribute money, okay, but the Assyrians continued to defeat the fortified cities, and we're going to see these a little bit later on, and surrounding Judah, and he attempted to offer, well, actually, he did more than an attempt. He offered the king of Assyria the tribute money to prevent the attack into Judah. So he gave it to him. Okay, so he gave the king 11 tons of silver and 1 ton of gold. But the king of Assyria, I guess he was really perturbed about it. He said, no, I want complete surrender. Now, I want you to understand, as I've always taught, or more importantly, as the Bible always taught, this is all the work of God. Everything that's happening here and that will happen to Assyria was already told through the prophets to the people before they were in captivity what was going to happen. God made it very clear that, yeah, I'm going to use Assyria as my, let's just call it in our vernacular, our switch, our whipping switch to my rebellious, stiff-necked people. But you should see what I'm going to do to them after I'm finished with them. So this is not anything that's new. They may not have listened, but it wasn't anything that was new. Everything, again, is being done by the Lord. So when he attempted to pacify Sennacherib by giving him what he wanted, then he had to prepare the city's defenses for war. All right, so let's go to 2 Chronicles chapter 32, and we'll see, again, integrating into Isaiah and 2 Kings other elements of what's going on. See how exciting this is that we get to actually study 3 books of the Bible at one time? Man, that's good. Who does that? 2 Chronicles 32. After these things and the establishment thereof, Sennacherib, king of Assyria, came and entered into Judah and camped against the fenced cities and thought to win them for himself, which is what we've already seen. And when Hezekiah saw that Sennacherib was come, that he was purposed to fight against Jerusalem. So the money was already offered and given. 11 tons of silver and 1 ton of gold was given to, that's a lot of gold and silver, by the way. That's a lot of stuff. That's a lot that he gave this king. And so when Hezekiah realized Sennacherib was coming, that it didn't matter, okay, well, he began to seek the counsel of his leaders, military leaders, to find a way to either stop or slow him down. So he was purposed to fight against Jerusalem. So here comes Sennacherib and the Assyrians. They're not going to stop their march towards Jerusalem. That's what they want. Okay. So again, the purpose of Hezekiah looking and saying, well, he's coming. We better prepare. We better try to stop or slow him down. Now, bear in mind that in 2 Kings, when Ahab was king of Judah, he made an alliance with Sargon II, king of Assyria. And by the time Hezekiah was king and the nation was strengthened by his reforms, Sennacherib was king of Assyria. Okay, because at one time Judah and Assyria made alliance together, but that alliance was broken. Okay, it's almost similar to when Joseph came to Egypt. Okay, but when Joseph died, there was a king that rose up and didn't know Joseph. Okay, so everything began to change. The alliances that were once there were no longer there. So Sennacherib was king of Assyria, And Judah broke ties with Assyria during that time, causing Assyria to get angry with Judah. In fact, Judah was in league with other nations, or at least attempting to be in league with other nations. Assyria at one time, against Assyria at one time, which was also contributed to Assyria's desire to defeat Jerusalem. So you might have been in league with smaller vassal nations, and you wanted to be in league with Egypt and what have you, and you're trying to find a military alliance to, to defeat us, which frankly, on the human level, that was fruitless. Verse 3 of 2 Chronicles 32. He took counsel with his princes, this is Hezekiah, and his mighty men to stop the waters of the fountains which were without the city or outside the city, and they did help him. So there was gathered much people together who stopped all the fountains and the brook that run through the midst of the land, saying, why should the king of Assyria, or the kings, plural, of Assyria, come and find much water? So the effort that Hezekiah and the military and the people, they were all one in trying to stop the invasion. The effort to cut off the water supply to the approaching Assyrian army was to prevent this army from getting the water to refresh themselves, not to mention to cause Judah to be without water during a possible long military campaign. So you're not going to give your enemies, an opportunity to take advantage of your land. Verse 5, also he strengthened himself and built up all the wall that was broken and raised it up to the towers and another wall without, and repaired Milo in the city of David, made darts and shields in abundance. Now, very interesting about Hezekiah. I think sometimes, and the one thing I like about studying the Bible is sometimes we see ourselves in a lot of these people. Sad to say, we see ourselves in those encouraged. We never see those either doubting or failing. Now, what I find very interesting about Hezekiah, and this is not really a fault, I'm not trying to find fault, I'm just stating the factual information about this man, was that God already gave him the victory in the past. So what would make him think that God would not do it now? Now, someone would probably object and say, well, it didn't mean he shouldn't prepare for it. And I agree. I agree with that. And when we get into chapter 37 of Isaiah, we're going to see that even more, because this chapter ends with the servants coming to Hezekiah and saying, pretty much, we're toast. They come with their clothes rent, we're toast. And that's when Hezekiah, in chapter 37 of Isaiah, begins to appeal to the Lord. And historically, a lot of these alliances were politically sound. See, again, we Americans, I tell you, sometimes I think if you look under dumbness, our whole country map is there. We just do things that don't look historically and grammatically and literally at the Bible. So we approach the Bible with great ignorance. Great ignorance. Now, again, making political alliances with the nations around you was a good idea, but sometimes it wasn't from the Lord. And then again, I go back to the reference with Egypt, that sometimes the alliances are for the benefit, but nations change, leaders change, and the minds of people change, and then you have to deal with that. Okay. So it may have been politically sound, but at that particular time, no, not really. He should have taken heed to the fact that these were not the people of God, and that at any moment these wicked kings and nations would come against them, especially if they did not obey the Lord. And that's something we need to be very concerned about in making alliances with people that don't know the Lord. It may be beneficial at the moment for a lot of reasons, but it may not be of the Lord. You know, we got to be careful about this. I know people may run to be not unequally yoked with unbelievers, but that's religion. In fact, that's one of the verses we should be looking at in the context of supposed fellowship with false religion. That's the context of that passage. I wish people would just start reading stuff in context. Okay? There's no relationship, no fellowship with righteousness and unrighteousness. So we're talking about false religious worship, assimilating idolatry in the worship of God. That's what it's talking about. Not marriage or anything else. There's a whole lot of prohibitions already written about marrying the unsaved all through the Bible. So we don't need to snatch a verse, which we should be interpreting properly, as a prohibition against false religious worship mingling with true worship of God. That's what we should be doing, and not making stuff up. Having said that, there is a ton of reasons why we should not be involved in any kind of leagues or that kind of thing, contract with unbelievers. At least if you do, you have to understand any moment they can change. And sometimes I think people, they live in fantasy. They don't believe that unbelievers can change their minds. Yeah, they can. And yeah, they do. They're not the people of God. They don't belong to God. We need to be very mindful that if we are in a position where we are with unbelievers, at any moment they can change their mind and be hostile to you. I know that from experience. You don't have to trust me. I was going to say, trust me. Forget about trusting me. You can learn the hard way or you can learn the easy way, but it's better if you learn God's way. Verse 6, and he set captains of war over the people and gathered them together to him in the street of the gate of the city, spake comfortably to them, saying, be strong and courageous, be not afraid nor dismayed for the king of Assyria, nor for all the multitude that is with him. For there be more with us than with him. Okay, now, numerically, that's not true, but he's not talking about numbers. Okay, because he just said there's more with us than with him. Numerically, he's not talking about that. Listen, verse 8, with him is the arm of flesh, but with us is the Lord our God to help us and fight our battles. And the people rested themselves upon the words of Hezekiah, king of Judah. I want you to keep that point in mind, that the people rested themselves upon the words of Hezekiah, the king. That's going to be very important in our study. And we'll see why. Very, very important. So again, we see that Hezekiah prepared the city's defenses, and he repaired the towers and the breaches in the walls, as well as constructing an outer wall, an inner wall and an outer wall, made weapons, darts and spears and shields in abundance. So they had all they can. They just didn't have the numbers. Okay, verse 9, after this did Sennacherib, king of Assyria, send his servants to Jerusalem, but he himself laid siege against Lachish, and all his power was with him, unto Hezekiah, king of Judah, and unto all Judah that were at Jerusalem, saying, thus saith Sennacherib, king of Assyria, whereon do ye trust that ye abide in the siege in Jerusalem? It was like, what are you doing? We see what you're doing. Why you can't stop us. What are you doing this for? Now, the servants, though not named, okay, in 2 Chronicles, but they're clearly named in 2 Kings 18, the servants were specified or specifically named, and this is also confirmed in Isaiah 36 as well, as we go back to verse 2 of Isaiah 36. Now, remember, Sennacherib is in Lachish. He just sent his servants to Jerusalem, but he himself laid siege against Lachish, and all his power was with him. So they already took over Lachish. All right. Verse 2, Isaiah 36. You'll see how important that is. And the king of Assyria sent Rakshaba from Lachish to Jerusalem. See how all that intertwines together? Unto King Hezekiah with a great army, and he stood by the conduit of the upper pool and the highway of the fuller's field. See, these are elements that aren't seen in Second Kings and also Second Chronicles, but they're seen, some elements, I should say, but they're seen in Isaiah. And then you have a lot of things that are not in Isaiah that are in Second Kings and Second Chronicles. So again, we need to understand the importance of knowing our Bible, integrating things together. And as I said at the onset, we're actually going to be doing an exposition of 3 books of the Bible at the same time, which is Isaiah, Second Chronicles, Second Kings. I love that. I love that a lot. Verse 2, and the king of Assyria sent Rabshakeh from Lachish to Jerusalem unto King Hezekiah with a great army, and he stood by the conduit of the upper pool in the highway of the fuller's field. Then came forth unto Eliakim, Hilkiah's son, which was over the house, and Shebna the scribe, and Joah, Asaph's son, the recorder. And Rabshakeh said unto them, Say ye now to Hezekiah, Thus saith the great king of Assyria, what confidence is this wherein thou trustest? See how all of it's integrated together? So the king of Assyria sent 3 of his main officials, okay, with a huge army, quite a huge army sent them, okay, and basically gave Hezekiah terms of surrender. He's saying, what is this you're doing? You're not going to defeat us, so you might as well surrender. So this is important. I ask you to remember the people rested comfortably in the words of Hezekiah. And I want you to watch this. These lessons are so important. So Rabshakeh went right to the source that God used to speak his truth to his people, Hezekiah. Hezekiah. Look at the verse again. Rabshakeh said unto them, Say ye now to Hezekiah, Thus saith the great king, the king of Assyria, what confidence is this wherein thou trustest? Okay. And Hezekiah, again, was the source that God used to speak to the people. Now, when we read the rest of this, we're going to see that the Assyrians, mainly Rabshakeh, representing the king of Assyria, Sennacherib, continued to attempt to place doubt in the minds and the hearts of the people, trusting God and trusting Hezekiah by having the people to focus by way of comparing what was surrounding them, their vast army, and their history of conquering other nations, okay, and their past experience, okay, again, defeating every army that came up against them, to what little was being done by Judah in their feeble attempt to build defenses against them. So it didn't look bleak, it was bleak. And again, it was not something that was just cerebral, something they were imagining. No, it was, if God doesn't intervene, we're done. That's it. We're toast. There is no other hope. There is no army coming to rescue us because God made sure of that. If we don't repent and go back to God for real, we're done. And Israel already got in captivity. We already see northern kingdom's toast. We should have learned at that point that God was serious, but we didn't do it. So this little defense was frankly just useless. Militarily, it was numerically useless. They were never going to defeat the Sennacherib. That was never going to happen. But all this is of the hand of God again. Period. So Rabshakeh continued to verbally attack the weakness of the alliance of all nations against Assyria. That's what he did. He kept saying, well, what army that you can name defeated us? We defeat them all. And what do you think you're doing building a wall of defense? This is ridiculous. We already have all the surrounding cities. What is this going to do? We have over 100,000 people. We already have 100,000, over 100,000, I think 160,000 forces surrounding. What are you going to do against us? Nothing. 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 Verse 5. I say, sayest thou, but they are but vain words. I have counsel and strength for war. Now on whom dost thou trust that thou rebellest against me? You know, so he mocks them by saying what they're saying is, we got counsel from Hezekiah, which is what he's going to clearly imply, and we're ready for war. He says, on whom dost thou trust that thou rebellest against me? Because your words are vain. They're useless. If I give the signal, this game is over. Lo, thou trustest in the staff of this broken reed on Egypt, wherein if a man lean, it will go into his hand and pierce it. So is Pharaoh king of Egypt to all who trust him. So we already knew and addressed this previously, that Judah attempted to make an alliance with Egypt, and God told them that it would never happen, though they didn't trust God anyway, and it didn't happen. So Rabshakeh was correct that Egypt was already a weakened nation and in no position to help anybody. As I said earlier and previously, they had enough internal struggles already with amongst themselves that they were in no place to help anybody. Verse 7. But if thou say unto me, we trust the Lord, or in the Lord our God, is it not he whose high places and whose altars Hezekiah had taken away, and said to Judah and to Jerusalem, ye shall worship before this altar? Now this gets very interesting, where we find, and it really began earlier in a few verses earlier, where Rabshakeh begins to act like he knows what God is doing. See, Rabshakeh doesn't know the Lord at all. He thinks he does, but he doesn't. And he's basically just talking. He really doesn't know the Lord. But as far as the Assyrians were concerned, any God is a God, that we defeated all the gods of the nations that they all trusted in. So what's Jehovah? I mean, they had all this confidence and they had the goods to back it up, until they met the true and living God. And that's when things really stopped. Okay, so Rabshakeh mistakenly thinks that the pagan groves that were taken down by Hezekiah, well, it might have made God angry against Judah. I mean, those groves that Hezekiah took down, those groves were groves of idolatry, which begs the question, how did he know that? I'll let you think about that for a while. Well, I think about it for a while. As far as Rabshakeh was concerned, gods were gods. Didn't matter to him. He also attempted to play on Israel's known weakness of idolatry. And that's another thing. The unsaved person knows your weakness. Don't think that they don't. And they'll play on that. And the objective is to get you to doubt God, number one, and doubt the source that God uses to give you his word. Now, you know that's true. I hope so. If you study the Bible, you know it's true. Now, Rabshakeh took it upon himself to interpret what God was doing to Hezekiah and to his people. The last person on earth, in fact, you don't even want to make this the last person on earth. You don't want to hear from anyone about what God is doing that doesn't know the Lord at all. Let me tell you something. An unsaved person might bump into the reality of what God is doing, but it wouldn't be because of him or her. I mean, they can acknowledge the obvious hand of God, but I wouldn't put stock in what they're saying as from the Lord. So Hezekiah and the people were not to be fooled by Rabshakeh's misinterpretation of who God is, what God is doing, and what he will do, since he did not know him at all. But again, by the time we get to the end of this chapter, And chapter 37, we're going to see that these folks were shaken up, that their alleged comfort level, they were comforted by the words of Hezekiah. They were no longer comforted. They listened to Rabshakeh, and they listened to him getting the people to ignore the Lord and the spokesman that God used among them for years. See how quick it is, how easy it is to forget the man or men of God that God has placed in your life? I remember, this is how ridiculous this all gets. I spent, I think, 12, 13 years at Family of Faith, a church that I founded. And right before I left, everybody was, oh, Pastor Howard, man of God, love the Lord, we love you. When I left, I suddenly became the devil incarnate. Literally, people were saying he's the devil incarnate. We hate him. They got fickle, just like that. And I mean, it turned from Harley, we love you. He's our pastor. He's been doing this for years. We know his integrity, to we hate him. He never was anything, blah, blah, blah. And they raise up, their leader. And God swatted him to death, literally killed him. This is not a joke, friends. People don't understand. People are fickle. They will turn on you in a second. I know what's coming out of their mouths, but like I said at the beginning, I'm not interested in what's coming out of their mouths, their faces. I'm interested in what their lives are telling you. You better watch the life of people more than what they're saying. Now, verse 8, now therefore give pledges, I pray thee, to my master the king of Assyria, and I will give thee 2,000 horses, if thou be able on thy part to set riders upon it. Now he's really mocking them now. Okay, just give me money, and I'll give the money to my master, the king of Assyria. They keep repeating the king of Assyria, and I will give you 2,000 horses, which included chariots, what have you. And if thou be able on thy part or on thy own to set riders upon it. He's saying you don't even have 2,000 men that you could set upon the chariots. If I sold you battle horses and chariot horses, gave you 2,000 of them, you don't have 2,000 people that could even ride them. You don't even really know what chariots do. You don't fight with chariots. Okay, verse 9. How then wilt thou turn away the face of one captain of the least of my master's servants, and put thy trust on Egypt for chariots and for horsemen? The lowest of the lowest of the lowest captain, the least of my master's servants, you can't beat him alone. Period. That's mocking. I mean, he's really mocking the alleged strength, which really isn't the strength of Judah because they don't have any. Okay, so he mocked them by saying that even if the king gave them 2,000 horses to ride on in battle, he didn't have 2,000 horsemen to ride on them. Not only that, but he said that one of the weakest captains in Assyria could defeat 2,000 horsemen alone. I'm telling you, the Assyrians weren't playing. They were a very wicked and brutal people. The enemy always exaggerates and overstates the reality for the express purpose of inciting fear and unbelief in God and God's man or men. That's what he's doing. And as we'll see, he's going to succeed. He's going to succeed. Verse 10, and now, or am I now come up without the Lord against this land to destroy it? The Lord said unto me, go up against this land and destroy it. Wow. That's bold. That's bold. Rabshakeh told him that I didn't come up without the Lord's approval and his orders. He told me to go up and defeat Judah. Oh, I mean, you want to talk about one of the strangest and strongest and most effective tools that Rabshakeh could use against Judah? Now, it was no secret at all, listen, that God used surrounding nations to chastise his people. Although the Lord used other nations to chasten his people, it was always when Israel or Judah was in rebellion against God, not when they obeyed. So you have to, of course, learn to determine whether God is chastening you or when you're being duped by the enemy to believe that God is using him or her to chasten you. But there's no question the prophets made it clear that God was going to use Assyria as his whipping tool. And so Rabshakeh said, I didn't come up here without the Lord's permission against his land to destroy it. The Lord, I came here because the Lord told me come up against Judah. Wow, that's bold. Then said Eliakim and Shebna and Joah of Rabshakeh, or unto Rabshakeh, speak, I pray thee, unto thy servants in the Syrian language, for we understand it. Speak not to us in the Jews' language, in the ears of the people that are on the wall. Now, this is really tragic here. So you got Eliakim, Shebna, and Joah knew that the common people on the wall would be able to hear what was being said, and they would respond one way or another to what Rabshakeh was saying. So they hear this conversation. They're building a wall, in or out of wall, to defend themselves against the very people that's surrounding them. And the leader of the Assyrian people sent 3 of his most trusted aides with 160,000 soldiers surrounding the city. And he's saying exactly what they're going to do. And so you have these 3 representatives of the Lord, or Representative Hezekiah, saying, please speak to us in the diplomatic language. You don't need to let everybody know what's going on. Verse 12, Rabshakeh said, have my master sent me to thy master and to thee to speak these words? In other words, just to you alone? Hath he not sent me to the men that sit upon the wall, that they may eat their own dung and drink their own piss with you? Woo! Oh my goodness. This man ain't playing. This man is not playing. And that's the sad thing about it. He ain't playing. Rabshakeh said that he was sent with a message from Sennacherib to all the people, not just to Hezekiah, not just in the diplomatic language. No, he was sent to all the people, even the ones on the wall building in vain. He says the message was that everyone who would not surrender wound up eating their own dung as food and drink their own urine as water unless they surrendered. That's serious. That's serious. Rabshakeh knew all too well that by destroying the people's confidence in God and in Hezekiah, he would be successful in causing their surrender. That's as far as I'm going this afternoon. Very interesting. See, this is why I spend time teaching the whole counsel of God. Don't be fooled by people that talk about teaching the whole counsel of God. Learn from those who do know and teach the whole counsel of God. I'm going to tell you something. There are very few people. I keep saying you better hear me, but you're not going to listen. I keep saying that because it's true. There are very, very few people that are teaching the whole counsel of God. One of the reasons why there is massive confusion in the professed church is our own willful, rebellious, foolish, and needless ignorance of the whole counsel of God. And I've been saying that for 50 years. I know what I'm talking about. Massive amounts of professing believers that should have been following Bible teachers who will teach the whole counsel of God, and they're not doing it. You're not doing it. And so when God takes home all these people you've been following, these public figures, following it for I don't know why, But once he removes all the public figures, you got nothing. You run around acting like you know what to do, which is an indictment against yourselves. If you've been following God's plan all along, that is finding a good, solid Bible teaching church that teaches the whole Bible. You wouldn't be running around looking like you don't know what you're doing, trying to hitch your wagon to the next whatever that comes along. I've never seen so many professing believers in such confusion. And it's never going to stop because we're not doing things God's way. We're just not doing it. It's our own fault. It's our own fault. Listen to this morning's sermon on Revelation. Okay, I said I was done. There's a subscribe button there in the corner. There we go. Now, after or when the music starts, you click that subscribe button. If you're not a subscriber, and be a subscriber, you'll get everything that ever comes across this platform, which is a lot of stuff. As I said earlier today, Sunday's Revelation, chapter 18, probably going to wrap up 18, Lord willing, next time, get into chapter 19. We have the book of Isaiah 36, may finish 36, get into 37, maybe. Monday is the book of Proverbs. We're going verse by verse through Proverbs. Tuesday, verse by verse through Psalm 119. Wednesday, verse by verse to the book of Acts. We just started the book of Acts. We're in part 5 of the introduction. We're going to actually, I think, get into the verse 1 of this coming Wednesday. Thursday, the Gospel of Mark. Friday, daylight. We begin message 1 of a 6-part series on qualified biblical leadership. All we do is Bible. All the time. No dancing bears, no clowns, no AI, none of that nonsense. We don't do no AI. We do, this is the real, this is me. Okay, there's no nonsense here. There's no playing. All right. We do what we got to do because it's the right thing to do. Find yourself a good Bible teaching church and stop playing games. Stop hunting, looking for the next chuck wagon, spiritual chuck wagon. Hit your wagon to hit your wagon to God and what He taught you. You're gonna be fine. All right, Lord willing. See some of you tomorrow, or next time.